the foster kitten's first Christmas tree, a sleep story of wonder and safety. The morning light crept through the curtains in soft golden ribbons, painting gentle stripes across the bedroom floor. Oliver blinked his eyes open slowly, still adjusting to this rhythm of waking without fear. For 3 mornings now, he had woken in this quiet room, nestled in the impossibly soft bed his foster mom had placed in the corner. Each morning, his small heart expected the cold concrete of the shelter, the harsh lights, the chorus of frightened cats. But each morning, he found himself here instead, wrapped in fleece and safety. He stretched carefully, extending each white paw, feeling his muscles pull and release. His claws caught momentarily in the blanket, and he paused, remembering how his human had shown him gently that it was all right to need here, that he wouldn't be scolded. The concept still felt strange, like understanding a language he'd only just begun to hear. Everything here was soft. The bed, the small rug, even the walls seemed to absorb sound rather than echo it back in harsh waves. Oliver sat up and surveyed his safe room. The pale blue walls glowed in the morning light like the inside of a robin's egg. His food and water bowls sat near the door, exactly where they'd been yesterday. The litter box occupied the far corner, tucked behind a folding screen. These things had become familiar anchors to his new reality, but something was different this morning. A scent drifted under the crack of his door like an invisible ribbon, rich and green and alive. It smelled like the outdoors, like the few memories he had of being very small and sheltered beneath the porch with his mother. Pine, his tiny nose worked overtime, trying to understand why something that smelled like outside could possibly be inside. He heard movement beyond his door. His foster mom was awake, humming something soft. But there were other sounds too, unfamiliar ones. A scraping noise, something being dragged across the hardwood floor, a soft grunt of effort, a pause, then more dragging. Oliver's curiosity flickered to life inside his chest, a small, warm flame. The shelter had taught him that investigating new things usually meant something frightening. But here, in 3 days, nothing frightening had happened. His human moved slowly around him, spoke in gentle tones, never raised her voice or made sudden movements. Maybe it would be safe to look. He padded toward the door, which stood slightly ajar, as it always did, giving him the choice to venture out or stay contained. Choice, that was a new concept. He nosed the door gently, pushing it open just enough to slip his small gray and white head through the gap. The living room looked entirely different. Oliver froze, his body half in his safe room and half out, tail low and uncertain. His foster mom was crouched near the corner by the big window, but now that corner was occupied by something enormous that definitely hadn't been there yesterday. A tree, an actual tree, standing upright inside the house. Oliver's young mind struggled to process this impossibility. Trees belonged outside, in that bright world beyond the windows. Trees were tall and solid and very, very large. And now, one was here, in the living room, as if it had simply decided to walk inside. His foster mom straightened up, brushing her hands together, and noticed him in the doorway. Her face transformed with that gentle smile he was learning meant welcome. She didn't rush toward him or make any sudden movements. She simply stayed where she was and spoke softly. "Good morning, Oliver. I see you've noticed our new friend. Pretty amazing, isn't it? It's a Christmas tree, sweet boy." Oliver took one small step forward, then another, his eyes never leaving the massive green presence. As he moved closer, the scent grew stronger, filling his nose completely, almost overwhelming. Sharp and clean and somehow comforting, like being wrapped in something ancient. The tree stood at least 6 times his human's height, its top nearly brushing the ceiling. Its branches spread out in layers, each level slightly smaller than the one below, creating a mountain shape. But instead of rock, these layers were made of thousands of soft green needles, each one catching the morning light. Oliver crept closer, his belly low to the ground, moving in that instinctive hunting crouch. Not that he was hunting, the tree was far too large, but the position made him feel safer, more in control. When he was about 2 feet away, he sat down abruptly and simply stared. His foster mom chuckled, a sound like water over smooth stones. "I know, buddy, it's a lot to take in. Your first Christmas tree is always special. Want to investigate? You're safe." Safe. She used that word often, and Oliver was beginning to believe it. He stood, took 3 more careful steps, and extended his neck as far as it would reach. His pink nose twitched rapidly, gathering information, processing the complex scent layers. Beneath the primary pine smell, Key detected other things: earth, water, the faint metallic scent of the stand holding the tree upright, something slightly sweet, like sap. And underneath all of it, the familiar, comforting scent of his human, her hands having touched every part of this tree. This last realization gave him courage. If his human had touched it, had welcomed it into their space, then perhaps it was all right for him to investigate further. Perhaps this enormous green stranger was a guest, like him. Oliver circled the base slowly, keeping a respectful distance, his tail held low, but not tucked. The tree sat in a round red stand filled with water, and he could hear the faint sound of liquid when he moved close enough. The trunk disappeared into this stand, thick and brown and rough, so different from the smooth surfaces he'd encountered here. Gathering his courage, Oliver reached out one small paw and touched the lowest branch. The needles prickled against his pad, not quite sharp, but definitely not soft. He pulled back immediately, startled, then reached out again, more prepared. The needles were cool and slightly slick, bunched together in clusters along the branch. When he pressed gently, they gave a little but held their shape, springy and resilient. Fascinating. Oliver pressed again, harder, and felt the needles bend beneath his paw. He pulled back and watched them slowly return to their original position. He tried this several more times, mesmerized. Press, bend, release, return. Emboldened, he leaned forward and gave the branch a small sniff, his nose nearly touching the needles. The scent was almost too strong this close, making his eyes water slightly, but he persisted. Then, very carefully, he opened his mouth just enough to let his tongue touch a single needle. Bitter. Definitely not food. He pulled back, smacking his lips with distaste, and heard his foster mom's gentle laugh from the kitchen. "Not very tasty, is it, Oliver? That's okay. Trees aren't for eating." Oliver looked toward the kitchen doorway where she stood, holding her steaming mug, her expression fond and patient. She wasn't scolding him for his investigation. She was simply observing, allowing him to learn on his own terms. He turned back to the tree and began a more thorough exploration, starting at the trunk and walking a complete circle. Snows worked constantly, cataloging every scent. Then he moved outward slightly and circled again, examining branches at his eye level. Some held water droplets that caught the light like tiny crystals. Others had small brown cones tucked among the needles. Oliver batted at one experimentally and watched it swing slightly, still firmly attached. The tree had personality. It wasn't just a thing taking up space. It was alive in its own way, even standing inside. It breathed that pine scent into the air. It responded to his touch with small movements and sounds, the whisper of needles brushing against each other, the faint creak of branches. For the first time since entering the foster home, Oliver felt a surge of something that might have been joy. This tree was strange and overwhelming and definitely unexpected. But it was also wonderful. It was new. He was learning. Didn't always have to mean frightening. Later that afternoon, Oliver padded into the living room after his nap and discovered his foster mom had been busy. She sat on the floor near the tree, surrounded by cardboard boxes decorated with faded pictures of ornaments and ribbons. She was carefully lifting something that glinted from the first box. "These are the lights," she explained, noticing him. "They're going to make the tree sparkle like stars." She stood and began the patient work of wrapping lights around the tree, starting at the bottom and working upward. Oliver watched, transfixed, as she moved slowly around the tree, weaving the strand through branches, stepping back to check her progress, adjusting until satisfied. It took nearly 20 minutes to thread 3 strands through the branches. During that time, Oliver remained perfectly still, watching. His foster mom hummed quietly as she worked, occasionally talking to him. "This part always takes patience," she said, reaching high. "But it's worth it. Magic always takes a little effort." Finally, she stepped back, surveyed her work, and walked to the wall outlet. "Ready, Oliver? Here comes the magic." She plugged in the lights. The tree exploded into brilliance. Hundreds of tiny lights, each one a perfect point of warm white radiance, suddenly illuminated every branch, every needle, every hidden space within the tree's green depths. The lights didn't burn with harsh brightness. They glowed, soft and inviting, creating pools of warmth that seemed to pulse gently, though Oliver's eyes told him they were steady and constant. The effect was mesmerizing. The entire tree seemed to come alive, seemed to breathe light into the room. Shadows danced on the walls as branches swayed slightly. The pine needles caught and reflected the glow, making each one shimmer like it was coated in morning dew. Even the rough barks seemed different now, highlighted in places, hidden in others, creating depth and mystery. Oliver sat down hard, forgetting entirely about his usual caution. His mouth fell open slightly, his eyes growing wider as he tried to take it all in. He had never seen anything remotely like this. Light that existed simply to create wonder. "Pretty spectacular, isn't it?" his foster mom said softly, sitting near him. She didn't touch him, just sat close enough that he could feel her calm presence. "I remember my first Christmas tree too, when they turned on the lights. I thought actual stars had come inside to visit." Oliver barely heard her words, though her tone soothed him. He was lost in the lights, in the way they spoke a language he was just beginning to understand. They didn't flash or change colors. They simply glowed, constant and warm, like tiny promises. Promises of safety, of beauty, of home. Without conscious thought, Oliver inched closer, then closer still, till he was sitting right at the tree's base, nestled between 2 branches, his face tilted upward. From this angle, the lights looked even more magical, like stars that had descended to rest in this indoor forest just for him. The warm glow touched his fur, made it shimmer slightly. A sound emerged from deep in his chest, so unexpected that Oliver himself startled when he heard it. A purr, the first real purr he'd made since entering this home. It had started small, almost questioning, but within seconds it grew stronger, deeper, reverberating through his tiny body, like a song he'd forgotten he knew. His foster mom's hand touched his head gently, and Oliver leaned into it instead of pulling away. Her fingers scratched behind his ears with perfect pressure, and his purr doubled. "There you are," she whispered. "There's my good, brave boy. You're home, Oliver. You're finally home." The words settled into his bones. Home. He was home. And home had Christmas trees with lights that glowed like captured stars, standing under the lit tree, purring for the first time in his new life. Oliver understood he had crossed some invisible threshold. He had arrived not just at a house, but at a place where he belonged. The next day, when Oliver emerged from his morning nap, he discovered his foster mom had added dozens of new mysterious objects dangling from the tree's branches. Oliver froze mid-step, one front paw raised as he processed this transformation. Dangling from nearly every branch were round, shiny things in colors he'd never seen before. Deep reds, silvers that caught light like water, golds that glowed, blues the color of sky. Each one hung from a small hook attached to a ribbon, and they swayed gently, spinning slowly and catching light with every movement. Oliver's hunting instincts roared to life. These weren't just objects. These were prey. These were the most tantalizing, perfectly sized prey items he had ever encountered. They moved. They caught light. They dangled at exactly the right height. He dropped into a crouch automatically, his tail lashing. His eyes locked onto a shiny red ornament hanging from a low branch, spinning slowly. That ornament, his instincts told him, was absolutely a strange bug that needed catching. Very slowly, Oliver crept forward. The plush rug muffled his footsteps, making him feel invisible, powerful. He was a mighty hunter, stalking through the forest. When he was within striking distance, Oliver paused. He wiggled his haunches, preparing. The ornament continued its lazy spin, oblivious. This was it. It's good. He gathered his courage and very gently, with one white paw extended and claws carefully retracted, he reached out and tapped the ornament. It swung. Oliver scrambled backward 3 steps, startled by his own success. He sat down hard and watched the ornament continue its pendulum swing, back and forth, back and forth. The movement was hypnotic and completely caused by his own action. Oliver had made that happen. When the ornament finally stilled, Oliver crept forward again. This time, he was prepared for the swing. He tapped again, harder, and the ornament obliged with a wider arc. Yes, this was excellent. He tapped a 3rd time, then a 4th, establishing a rhythm. Tap and watch, tap and watch. From the kitchen, his foster mom called out, amusement in her voice. Oliver, are you making friends with the ornaments? Just remember, gentle pause only, okay? Gentle pause, right? Oliver could do gentle. He moved to the next ornament, a silver one shaped differently. This one was more oval, hung higher. Oliver sat up on his hind legs, stretching his body to full length, and managed to hook it with one extended claw, pulling it toward him before releasing. It swung back, hit the trunk with a soft tap, and returned. A toy that played back. For the next 20 minutes, Oliver moved methodically around the tree, investigating each accessible ornament. A gold one with bumpy texture, a green one shaped like a pickle, a blue one with glitter, a small wooden shape like a tiny house. Each had its own character, its own weight and swing pattern, its own way of catching light. His foster mom appeared with her phone, and Oliver heard the soft shutter sound. You're being so gentle, she said approvingly. That red one you keep playing with, that was on my grandmother's very first tree. It's traveled with our family for almost 70 years, waiting to make a new kitten happy. Oliver paused to look at her, then back at the red ornament. Important, precious, special, and yet she was allowing him to interact with it, trusting him. The responsibility settled over him like a warm blanket. He turned back to the ornament, but this time, instead of tapping it, he simply sat and looked at it, studying the way it hung, the way light seemed to come from within its glossy surface. Beautiful. Not prey after all, but something else entirely. Something that existed to create wonder. Oliver was beginning to understand that not everything that moved needed to be hunted. Some things moved simply to bring joy, and watching them was enough. Later that day, Oliver's attention shifted from the dangling ornaments to the tree itself. If his foster mom could reach high into the tree, then surely he, as a cat, should be able to climb it. Cats climbed trees. This was fundamental knowledge. Even though he'd never climbed a real tree before, his body knew the motions, or so he thought. He positioned himself at the base, studying the bark with calculating eyes, grip with claws, pull with front legs, push with back legs. Simple. Oliver launched himself at the trunk with all the confidence of youth and inexperience. His front claws extended and dug into the bark, finding purchase. Success. For approximately 1.5 seconds, he clung about 8 inches off the ground, feeling triumphant. Then reality intervened. The trunk was not anchored by roots deep in earth. It was sitting in a stand, held by bolts and water and hope. When Oliver's small body hit it, the entire tree shuddered. The ornaments swung wildly. The lights flickered as branches shook, and Oliver, clinging desperately to bark that suddenly felt far too slippery, realized he'd made a terrible miscalculation. His back paws scrabbled, finding no purchase. His front claws couldn't get proper grip. For a moment that felt much longer than it was, Oliver hung there, suspended between ambition and gravity. Then gravity won. His claws slipped free. His body twisted in midair, that instinctive cat rotation, attempting to land feet first, but he was too low, too inexperienced to complete the move. He landed on his side on the soft tree skirt with a small oof of expelled air in surprise. For several seconds, Oliver lay there, stunned, staring up at the underside of the tree's lowest branches. From this angle, the lights created a canopy of stars above him. His pride hurt far more than his body. Behind him, he heard a sound and turned his head to see his foster mom standing in the doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth, shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. "Oh, Oliver," she said, her voice trembling between concern and amusement. "That was quite an attempt. Are you okay, brave boy?" She crossed to him quickly, but didn't immediately scoop him up, giving him space to assess his condition. Oliver appreciated this. Kay struggled to his feet, shook himself thoroughly, and sat down with what he hoped was dignity, wrapping his tail around his paws as if the entire tumble had been completely intentional. His foster mom knelt nearby and extended her hand. Oliver considered her for a moment, then stepped forward and bumped his head against her fingers, accepting comfort. Her hand moved to scratch behind his ears, and despite his wounded dignity, he found himself leaning into the touch. "Christmas trees aren't really for climbing," she explained gently. "No, that's probably confusing for a cat, cod, but there are much better places for a clever kitten to explore." She gestured to the tree's base, to the soft velvet tree skirt that had cushioned his fall. "See, even when things don't go as planned, sometimes we discover something even better." Oliver looked where she was gesturing and noticed, for the first time, the tree skirt properly. The fabric was rich burgundy velvet, plush and inviting, with a slight shimmer. The edges were trimmed with gold cord. But most importantly, the skirt created a perfect circle around the tree's base. And where it wrapped around the trunk, there was an opening, a gap that led to a hidden space beneath the lowest branches. A space just big enough for one small kitten. Oliver's ears perked forward with interest. He'd been so focused on going up, on climbing high, that he hadn't considered there might be magic at ground level too. He stood, approached the opening in the tree skirt, and cautiously poked his head into the shadowy space beneath the tree's canopy. Oh, this was something entirely different. This was wonderful. Space beneath the Christmas tree's lowest branches was like entering another world, a secret room that existed in plain sight. Oliver took one tentative step forward, then another, and found himself enveloped in a cocoon of green needles, twinkling lights, and soft velvet beneath his paws. This was a den. This was a safe place. This was exactly what every part of his cat nature had been seeking. Oliver turned in a small circle, his tail brushing against the needles as he assessed every angle. The pine scent was strongest here, concentrated and rich, filling each breath. The lights, viewed from beneath, created a magical ceiling of warm stars, their glow filtering through layers of branches to paint the velvet floor in pools of amber. The sounds of the apartment became softer here, as if the branches absorbed noise and replaced it with gentle silence. From outside his sanctuary, Oliver could hear normal sounds: the heating vent's quiet hum, distant traffic, his foster mom moving in the kitchen, dishes clinking, water running. These sounds reached him filtered and gentled, no longer immediate or demanding. simply background music of peaceful existence. He walked to the trunk and examined it from this new angle. With no ambition to climb, the bark was simply interesting texture, rough and real, smelling of earth and age. He rubbed his cheek against it, marking it with his scent, claiming this space. The trunk was cool against his face, solid and reassuring. Oliver moved to the edge where branches hung lowest, creating a curtain between him and the outside world. He could see through the needles, watch his foster mom as she moved about, but he himself remained hidden, private, secure. This dual awareness, being able to observe while remaining unobserved, was deeply satisfying. He tested the velvet beneath his paws, kneading it gently, claws extending and retracting in the age-old motion kittens made when safe enough to show vulnerability. The fabric was thick and forgiving, giving beneath his touch before springing back. After thorough investigation of every corner, Oliver finally settled himself in the very center of the space, positioned so he could see out in multiple directions. He circled 3 times, instinct demanding this ritual, then lowered himself onto the velvet with a sigh of complete contentment. The velvet compressed beneath his weight, conforming to his body, cradling him. The pine scent surrounded him. The lights above created their eternal glow. And for the first time in his young life, Oliver felt completely, utterly safe. His foster mom's footsteps approached, and through the veil of branches, he saw her kneel, peering in. Her face, when she spotted him, curled in the center, transformed with such joy that Oliver's heart squeezed. "Sweet boy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You found it. You found your spot. That's perfect, Oliver. It's absolutely perfect." She didn't reach in to pull him out, didn't disturb him. She simply looked at him with warm eyes, smiled, and walked away, leaving him to his discovery. This respect for his autonomy meant more than she could know. Oliver tucked his nose under his tail, a position he'd only felt comfortable assuming once before, and let his eyes drift half-closed. From this position, the lights became soft blurs of warmth. The branches became protective shadows, and the world became exactly the size it needed to be. His purrs started again, that deep, rumbling vibration. But now, it didn't surprise him. It felt natural, inevitable, like breathing. The purr resonated through his small body, through the velvet beneath him, perhaps even through the tree itself, becoming part of the space's essential magic. The afternoon light shifted as Oliver dozed, painting long golden rectangles across the floor, visible beyond his curtain of branches. He slept deeply, the kind of sleep that had been impossible in the shelter. When he woke, early evening had settled. The winter sun had set, leaving the windows dark, and the Christmas tree lights glowed even more brightly in response. His foster mom had turned off the overhead lights, letting the trees' gentle radiance illuminate the space, and the effect was breathtaking. Oliver blinked slowly, emerging from sleep, and simply looked up through the branches at his personal sky of captured stars. He heard the soft sound of pages turning and realized his foster mom was in her usual evening spot, curled in the armchair, reading. This was the quietest part of the day, when the apartment settled into restful stillness. No sudden noises, no unexpected events, just gentle routine. Oliver stood, stretched elaborately, feeling his spine curve and release. He was stiff from sleeping in one position, but pleasantly so. He turned to exit his sanctuary and paused, looking back. It would be here when he returned, his spot, his safe place. The knowledge filled him with quiet confidence. He emerged from beneath the branches and stepped into the main living room. His foster mom looked up from her book and smiled. "There you are, sleepy boy. Did you have a good nap? You've been under there for almost 2 hours." 2 hours? Oliver had slept for 2 hours without startling awake, without panic, without that constant vigilance that had defined his existence. The realization was stunning. He walked to her chair and sat at her feet, looking up. She closed her book and reached down to offer her hand. Oliver bumped his head against her palm, then rubbed his whole body along her leg, marking her with his scent, claiming her as his person, just as he'd claimed the tree sanctuary as his space. "Shh, I think you're settling in," she said softly, scratching behind his ears. "I think you're starting to understand that this is your home now. You're not going back. You're staying right here with me. Maybe forever, if that's what you choose." Forever. The word resonated in Oliver's chest. Forever meant tomorrow would be like today. Forever meant the Christmas tree would be there when he woke up. Forever meant gentle hands and soft voices and freedom to explore. Forever meant home. His foster moms cooped him up slowly enough that he could object if he wanted, but Oliver surprised himself by relaxing into her hold, letting himself be lifted to her lap. She settled back with him, curled against her stomach, and picked up her book again. "We'll read together. You rest, and I'll read, and we'll just be together." It sounded perfect. Oliver adjusted his position slightly, finding the exact right spot where her body heat warmed him most, where the rise and fall of her breathing rocked him gently, where he could see both the Christmas tree and the darkened window reflecting its lights. He tucked his paws beneath him and let his eyes half close. His foster mom read aloud softly, not because Oliver understood, but because she seemed to enjoy sharing. Her voice rose and fell with the narrative, sometimes excited, sometimes thoughtful. Oliver didn't follow the plot, but he followed the emotions, the music of her voice. It was intimate, this sharing, even if only one of them comprehended the actual tale. The Christmas tree lights continued their patient glow, illuminating the space with soft insistence. As Oliver watched them through slitted eyes, seeing them blur and sharpen as his focus drifted. Those lights had become the visual representation of safety for him, a marker that said this place was different from all places that had come before. His purrs started again without conscious decision, a rumbling accompaniment to his foster mom's reading voice. She paused mid-sentence and looked down at him, her expression so tender it made Oliver's heart squeeze. "That's my good boy," she whispered. "That's my brave, beautiful Oliver. You've come so far. I'm so proud of you." Proud. Oliver didn't fully understand, but he understood that whatever he was doing was right, was good, was making his human happy. And making her happy made him happy, creating a loop of positive feeling that reinforced itself, building trust upon trust. They stayed that way until Oliver's stomach rumbled. His foster mom laughed and gently deposited him back on the floor. "Come on, hungry boy, let's get you fed." After dinner, Oliver returned to the living room, drawn once again to the magnetic pull of the Christmas tree. Evening had fully settled, and the tree seemed to glow even more brightly against the darkness. Presently, the reflections in the window made it appear as though there were two trees, one in the room and one in some parallel space outside, creating double the magic. He walked a slow circuit around the tree, reacquainting himself with each element. The ornaments hung still now, their wild swinging from his investigations long settled. They caught light and held it, each one a small miracle. The tree skirt beckoned, marked now with a slight depression where he'd napped. But instead of immediately returning to his sanctuary, Oliver sat in front of the tree, simply looking at it, taking in the whole magnificent presence. From this perspective, the tree was overwhelmingly beautiful. It rose from floor to ceiling like a green tower of light and wonder, each branch deliberately placed, each ornament carefully chosen, each light positioned to create maximum warmth. His foster mom came to sit beside him, her evening tea in hand. Together, they sat in comfortable silence, human and kitten, both gazing at the tree. After several minutes, she spoke softly. "My grandmother used to say that Christmas trees were bridges. It's a way to bring light into the darkest time of year, to remind us that spring would come again. I never fully understood until I experienced real darkness and learned what it felt like to need light desperately. She paused, sipping her tea, and Oliver waited. You needed light too, didn't you, Oliver? You were in a dark place. The shelter did its best, but it couldn't give you what you really needed. A home, a person to love you, a safe space to discover who you are. And now, here you are, sitting in front of a Christmas tree, purring, content. That's what the tree represents. Hope, the promise that dark times don't last forever. Oliver leaned against her leg, acknowledging her words, even if he couldn't understand them all. He grasped the emotion, the connection between his experience and some larger understanding of meaning. His foster mom stroked his back. You know what I think? I think you finding that spot under the tree is the most perfect thing that could have happened. 'Cause that's what this season is really about. Not the presents or decorations. It's about finding where you belong. It's about coming home. Coming home. Yes, Oliver understood that now. Home wasn't just this apartment. Wasn't just the physical space. Home was the Christmas tree and the lights and the soft sanctuary beneath the branches. Home was his foster mom's voice reading in the evening. Home was freedom to investigate ornaments without fear. Home was being able to sleep for 2 hours and wake up safe. Home was all these small moments accumulating into something larger, creating a foundation of trust and security. He stood and walked to the tree, to the gap in the tree skirt that marked the entrance to his sanctuary. He paused at the threshold and looked back at his foster mom, who watched him with shining eyes and a soft smile. Then he pushed through the curtain of needles and entered his special space. The velvet welcomed him back, still holding warmth from his earlier nap. The lights above painted their familiar patterns. The trunk stood solid and reassuring. Everything was exactly as he'd left it, exactly as it should be. Oliver circled twice, chose his spot with care, and settled down into a compact curl, tail wrapped around his body, nose tucked against his paws. From outside his sanctuary, he heard his foster mom's voice, thick with emotion. Good night, Oliver. Sleep well under your tree. I'll be right here if you need me. Always right here. Always, like forever, like home. Oliver's purrs started again, that deep, rumbling song of contentment. He let his eyes close fully, surrendering to sleep without reservation, without fear, without any of the hypervigilance that had defined his existence. The Christmas tree stood guard above him, its lights glowing steadily, its branches creating shelter, its very presence promising safety. And beneath it, curled on soft velvet in his perfect hidden den, one small foster kitten slept a deep, peaceful sleep of someone who had finally, truly come home. The tree had taught him that magic was real, not the magic of sparkle and shine, but the deeper magic of transformation. It's the magic of seeing the world through new eyes, of discovering that home could be found, that safety could be trusted, that love could be accepted. The tree had been his teacher, his sanctuary, his bridge from fear to confidence. But the real magic, the truest magic, wasn't in the tree at all. The real magic was in Oliver himself, in his courage to investigate despite fear, in his willingness to trust despite past hurt, in his ability to claim a space as his own and believe he deserved it. The tree had simply held space for him while he discovered his own strength, his own capacity for joy, his own worthiness of love. As Oliver drifted deeper into sleep, his purr gradually softening into quiet breathing, the apartment settled into peaceful silence. His foster mom remained in her reading chair a while longer, occasionally glancing toward the tree, seeing the small gray and white shape curled beneath it, visible through the lower branches. Her heart was full in a way she had unexpected when she'd agreed to foster one timid kitten from the overcrowded shelter. She thought she was giving him a temporary home, a safe place to heal before finding his forever family. But watching him sleep under the Christmas tree, seeing how far he'd come in just days, she knew with absolute certainty that his forever family was already here. He was hers, and she was his, and the paperwork to make it official was just a formality. The real adoption had happened the moment he'd chosen to trust her. It's the moment he'd ventured out from the safe room to investigate the mysterious tree. The moment he'd curled up in that sanctuary and purred himself to sleep. The Christmas tree had worked its magic on both of them, it seemed. It had given Oliver a focal point for his transformation and given her a window into his healing heart. She made a mental note to take pictures of him under the tree before it had to come down in a few weeks. She wanted to remember this, their first Christmas together. It's the beginning of their story, the moment a frightened, sheltered kitten became her beloved companion. But that was for later. For now, there was only this peaceful evening. It's the gentle glow of lights and the soft sound of a contented cat sleeping in his sanctuary. Oliver woke once in the deep night, as cats often do, and lay still for a moment, orienting himself. The apartment was dark, except for the Christmas tree lights, which his foster mom had left on, casting their warm glow through his sanctuary. He could hear her breathing from the nearby bedroom, slow and even, the sound of peaceful sleep. Everything was quiet. Everything was safe. Oliver stretched slightly, readjusted his position on the velvet, and looked up through the branches at the lights above. They seemed even more magical in the deep night, like genuine stars that had found their way inside just to watch over one small kitten. The pine scent surrounded him like a gentle embrace. The enclosed space held him securely. This, Oliver thought in his wordless way, was what home felt like. Not just shelter from weather and danger, but this specific feeling of being exactly where you belonged, surrounded by things that brought comfort and joy, knowing that when morning came, everything good would still be here. He tucked his nose back under his tail and let his eyes drift closed once more. His purse started up briefly, a quiet rumble of contentment, before fading as sleep reclaimed him. Above him, the Christmas tree continued its patient vigil, its lights glowing steadily through the night, keeping watch over the small miracle happening beneath its branches. The miracle of a frightened kitten learning to trust. The miracle of finding home. The miracle of understanding that you were wanted, you were safe, you were loved. When morning came again, filtering through the curtains in pale winter light, Oliver emerged from his sanctuary feeling transformed. Not dramatically different. He was still the same small gray and white kitten, but different in some essential internal way. Yesterday, he'd been a foster kitten exploring a strange tree. Today, he woke up as Oliver, who had a home and a person and a perfect spot under a Christmas tree where he belonged. His foster mom was already awake, sitting on the floor near the tree with her morning coffee, still in her pajamas. When Oliver pushed through the needle curtain, she smiled at him with such warmth that his heart squeezed with recognition. That was his person, his human, his mom, even if he didn't have words for the concept. "Good morning, Oliver," she said softly. "How was your first night under the tree? I checked on you around midnight, and you were sleeping so peacefully. I think you found your favorite spot in the whole apartment, haven't you?" Oliver walked to her and bumped his head against her hand, his way of saying yes, of saying thank you, of saying all the things he felt but couldn't express. She scratched behind his ears exactly the way he loved, and his purr started immediately, loud and certain in the quiet morning. "I've been thinking," she continued, her voice gentle. "I know I'm supposed to be fostering you, helping you heal so you can find your forever home. But Oliver, I don't think I can let you go. I think your forever home is right here. Would that be okay with you? If we made this official, you became mine and I became yours permanently." Oliver didn't understand all the words, but he understood the tone, the question behind it, the hope in her voice. He responded the only way he knew how, by climbing into her lap, kneading her legs gently with his paws, and purring so loudly that she laughed with delight. "I'll take that as a yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion. She wrapped her arms loosely around him, not constraining but embracing, and Oliver relaxed into her hold completely. "Welcome home, Oliver. Really, truly home. Forever. Forever. That word again. But now Oliver understood it fully. Forever meant this feeling wouldn't end. Forever meant the Christmas tree would come back next year. Forever meant he had a person who loved him in a place that was his. Forever meant he could stop being afraid because nothing was going to change in the ways that had hurt him before. They sat together in front of the glowing Christmas tree, human and kitten, now officially family, while the morning light grew stronger and the world outside began to wake. But inside, in this warm apartment, time seemed to pause, holding space for this perfect moment of belonging. The weeks that followed were filled with gentle routines and small discoveries. Oliver grew more confident each day, venturing further into the apartment, claiming new favorite spots, developing his personality. He learned that the birds outside the window were endlessly fascinating, that sunny spots were perfect for napping, that his human's lap was the best place to be during evening reading time, But no matter what new things he discovered, no matter how comfortable he became in other parts of the apartment, Oliver always returned to a sanctuary under the Christmas tree. It remained his home base, his safe place, the spot that represented everything good about his new life. Morning naps, afternoon rests, nighttime sleep, they all happened beneath those glowing branches, on that soft velvet, surrounded by pine scent and gentle light. His mom watched this pattern with understanding and made sure the tree stayed fresh and beautiful as long as possible. She knew it would have to come down eventually. Christmas trees didn't last forever, but she also knew that Conifer's attachment to it represented something important, The tree had been his bridge from fear to trust, and she wouldn't rush its departure. But more importantly, she understood what Oliver was still learning, that the security he felt under the tree wasn't really about the tree itself. It was about what the tree represented: safety, wonder, home. Those things would remain long after the tree was gone, woven permanently into the fabric of their life together. One particularly quiet afternoon, about 2 weeks after Christmas, Oliver lay in his sanctuary, watching dust motes dance in the light filtering through the branches. His mom was reading nearby. The apartment was filled with that peaceful silence that comes from two beings completely comfortable in each other's presence. Oliver thought about his journey from the shelter to this moment. The cage, the fear, the uncertainty, then the safe room, the gradual exploration, the tentative trust. And finally, the Christmas tree, the magnificent green giant that had appeared in his living room and changed everything. The tree had taught him the most important lesson of his young life, that magic wasn't something that happened to you. Magic was something you created by being brave enough to investigate, curious enough to explore, and open enough to believe that good things were possible. The tree had been extraordinary, yes, but Oliver's willingness to approach it, to trust it, to claim it as his own, that had been the real magic all along. As he drifted toward sleep, cocooned in his perfect sanctuary, Oliver felt a profound sense of gratitude for the tree that had welcomed him, for the lights that had shown him beauty, for the ornaments that had made him laugh with their swinging dance, for the velvet that cradled him softly, for the sanctuary that had given him shelter while his heart learned to trust, but most of all, for the patient, loving human who had brought the tree into their home, who had given him time and space, Pia, to heal, who had understood that a frightened kitten needed something magical to believe in before he could believe in himself. Oliver's purrs started one more time, deep and constant, the sound of a cat who had found his home and knew it. Above him, the Christmas tree lights glowed steadily, bearing witness to the small miracle of transformation happening beneath its branches. The miracle of a foster kitten who had discovered that home wasn't just a place, it was a feeling of safety, of love, of belonging completely and without reservation. And that feeling, Oliver now understood, would last far longer than any Christmas tree. It would last forever. If this story of Oliver's journey touched your heart, if his discovery of home and safety helped guide you toward peaceful rest, please consider showing your support with a like. And subscribe to Deep Sleep Stories Hub for more quiet nights and restful journeys. May you find your own sanctuary, your own place of perfect peace. And may you sleep as deeply and contentedly as one small kitten beneath his magical Christmas tree. Good night and sleep well.